Welcome to Historical Scholia. In this episode, part 5 of our series, A Social and Economic History of Britain, we turn our attention to a transformative era, the Renaissance and the Tudor economy, spanning from 1485 to 1603. This was a time of profound change, an age of exploration, religious upheaval, and economic expansion. The Tudor period saw the emergence of England as a significant European power, driven by the ambitions of its monarchs, the growth of trade, and the shifting social landscape. In this episode, we will explore the Renaissance in Britain and its impact on learning and culture, the economic policies of the Tudor monarchy, and the rapid expansion of trade and exploration that reshaped England's place in the world. We will delve into the daily lives of both town dwellers and rural workers, uncovering the social structures that define their existence. We will examine the role of women in the economy and society, as well as the increasing importance of education and schooling in shaping the future of England. And finally, we will assess the economic impact of the Reformation, a seismic shift in religious life that restructured the wealth and power of the nation. Join us as we uncover the forces that shaped this defining period of British history. If you enjoy our content, please like, subscribe, and share this video to help support our work. Your engagement allows us to continue producing in-depth historical documentaries. Now, let us journey into the Tudor world, where power, faith, and commerce converge to forge the foundations of modern Britain. Chapter 1. The Renaissance in Britain. The Renaissance was a time of great intellectual and cultural revival in Europe, and its influence gradually reached Britain. Humanism, a philosophy emphasizing classical learning, reshaped education and intellectual thought, leading to a renewed interest in ancient texts and ideas. The expansion of universities such as Oxford and Cambridge facilitated the spread of Renaissance thinking, while the rise of grammar schools provided a more structured education for boys from different social backgrounds. While the Renaissance is often associated with Italy, a distinct Northern Renaissance emerged across Europe, including in Britain. Unlike the Italian Renaissance, which emphasized classical antiquity and humanism rooted in Greco-Roman traditions, the Northern Renaissance was shaped by a fusion of medieval traditions and emerging humanist thought. The influence of Christian humanism, particularly the works of Erasmus, played a crucial role in intellectual circles, emphasizing moral philosophy, education, and the reform of religious institutions. Literature flourished during this period, with writers increasingly embracing the vernacular rather than relying solely on Latin. In England, this shift led to the works of Geoffrey Chaucer maintaining influence well beyond the medieval period, while later figures such as Sir Thomas More, with his seminal work, Utopia, 1516, blended Renaissance humanism with social critique. The late Tudor period saw a blossoming of English drama and poetry, culminating in the works of William Shakespeare, Christopher Marlowe, and Ben Jonson. Their plays and poetry not only entertained, but also engaged with political, philosophical, and social issues of the time, leaving an indelible mark on the literary landscape. The visual arts, too, reflected the unique character of the Northern Renaissance. While Italian artists like Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo were celebrated for their grand, idealized depictions of the human form, Northern artists such as Hans Holbein the Younger, who became the court painter to Henry VIII, focused on realism, intricate details, and symbolic storytelling. Portraiture flourished, with an emphasis on individual expression and social status, as seen in Holbein's meticulous depictions of Tudor courtiers. Music also evolved during the period, moving away from medieval plainchant toward more complex polyphonic compositions. Composers such as Thomas Tallis and William Byrd produced choral works that blended traditional sacred themes with innovative harmonies, influencing the development of both religious and secular music in Britain. Architecture in England saw a transition as well. The late medieval Gothic style gradually gave way to the Renaissance-inspired classical forms, introduced through Italian influence. This period saw the construction of grand manor houses, often incorporating elements of symmetry and proportion, while retaining traditional English features such as timber framing. The dissolution of the monasteries under Henry VIII had a profound effect on the architectural landscape, as many former ecclesiastical buildings were repurposed or dismantled, their materials used to construct the grand country estates of the rising gentry. In this way, the Renaissance in Britain, while influenced by the Italian movement, developed its own distinct identity, shaped by religious change, emerging literary traditions, and a unique artistic and architectural heritage. It was a period of transformation that laid the cultural and intellectual groundwork for the dramatic social and economic changes to come. Early scientific discoveries also played a crucial role in shifting perspectives. Among the most enigmatic figures of the English Renaissance was John Dee, 1527 to 1609, a polymath whose intellectual pursuits spanned mathematics, astronomy, navigation, alchemy, and the occult. Dee was born on July 13, 1527, in Tower Ward, London, into a family with connections to the Tudor court. His father, Roland Dee, served as a minor official in Henry VIII's household, affording young John the opportunity for a strong education. Dee's academic prowess became evident early on. He entered St. John's College, Cambridge, at just 15 years old, earning his Bachelor of Arts degree in 1545. By 1548, he was lecturing on mathematics at the university and had developed a fascination with the interplay between science, mysticism, and philosophy. His thirst for knowledge took him abroad, where he studied in Louvain and Paris, gaining expertise in subjects such as cartography, optics, and astrology. Upon his return to England in the 1550s, Dee rose to prominence as one of the leading intellectuals of his time. He became an advisor to Queen Mary I, though it was under Elizabeth I that he truly flourished. A fervent advocate for maritime expansion, Dee provided navigational expertise to English explorers, including those preparing for voyages to the New World. He even coined the term British Empire, envisioning England's future as a dominant global power. His contributions to navigation played a crucial role in the era's overseas ambitions, influencing figures such as Sir Humphrey Gilbert and Sir Francis Drake. Yet Dee's intellectual pursuits were not limited to practical sciences. He was deeply engaged in esoteric and mystical studies, believing that divine knowledge could be accessed through both rigorous scholarship and supernatural communication. By the 1580s, he had begun collaborating with the scryer Edward Kelly, attempting to contact angelic beings through crystal gazing. These supposed celestial messages, which Dee meticulously recorded, formed the basis of what became known as Enochian magic. Though controversial, his spiritual experiments attracted the interest of European rulers, including the Holy Roman Emperor Rudolph II, whom Dee visited in Prague. Despite his prominence, Dee's fortunes declined after Elizabeth I's death in 1603. James I, skeptical of Dee's occult interests, did not extend the same favor as his predecessor. Dee's later years were marked by financial hardship and dwindling influence. He died in 1609, or possibly early 1609/1610, likely at his home in Mortlake, where he had spent much of his life amassing one of England's largest private libraries. Though often remembered for his mystical pursuits, Dee was first and foremost a scholar whose work bridged the gap between the medieval and modern worlds. His contributions to mathematics, navigation, and the intellectual framework of the Renaissance remain integral to understanding the period's dynamic blend of science and mysticism. The introduction of the printing press in the late 15th century revolutionized knowledge dissemination. Books became more widely available, fostering an educated elite that would shape England's economic and political future. John Tait's paper mill, established near Hartford in the late 15th century, holds a significant place in England's economic and intellectual history as the country's first recorded paper manufacturing site. Before Tait's venture, England relied on imported paper, primarily from France and Italy. The ability to produce paper domestically marked an important step in reducing reliance on foreign supplies and fostering a self-sustaining literary and administrative culture. Tait, a successful London merchant, recognized the growing demand for paper in an age of expanding literacy and bureaucratic record-keeping. His mill produced high-quality paper that was used in early English printing, most notably by William Caxton's successor, Wynkyn de Worde. One of the first books printed on Tate's paper was an edition of Bartholomeus Anglicus de Proprietatibus Rerum circa 1495. Although Tate's enterprise did not immediately lead to widespread paper-making in England, production remained limited for another century. It laid the foundation for the eventual growth of the industry. By proving that fine quality paper could be made in England, his mill set the stage for the expansion of domestic printing, the dissemination of Renaissance ideas, and the broader accessibility of books and documents that would shape English intellectual life. Chapter 2. The Tudor Economy. The Tudor period saw significant shifts in economic structures. Agriculture remained the backbone of the economy, but developments such as improved plowing techniques and crop rotation enhanced productivity. The system of feudal obligations that had dominated medieval England was gradually replaced by monetary rents, granting peasants more autonomy while increasing landlords' wealth. The enclosure movement, which involved the consolidation of open fields into privately owned plots, altered rural communities. While enclosures improved agricultural efficiency, they also displaced many peasants, forcing them to seek work elsewhere. These economic shifts created a growing divide between wealthy landowners and landless laborers, laying the groundwork for future social tensions. Chapter 3. Expansion of Trade and Exploration. As England engaged more with the wider world, its economy became increasingly dependent on trade and exploration. The discovery of the New World opened up lucrative markets for goods such as wool, cloth, and spices, strengthening England's merchant class. The development of guilds ensured that trade remained regulated, with skilled workers specializing in various crafts. The Royal Navy, significantly expanded under Henry VIII and Elizabeth I, played a vital role in securing maritime trade routes. English explorers like John Cabot and Sir Francis Drake sought new territories and trading opportunities, leading to the early foundations of England's future empire. Trade routes extended across Europe and beyond, bolstering the country's economic prosperity. Chapter 4. The Role of the Monarchy. The Tudor monarchs played a decisive role in shaping England's economic landscape. Henry VII's careful financial management stabilized the economy after years of instability, ensuring a more secure monarchy. His policies promoted trade and limited the power of overmighty nobles, allowing for the rise of a stronger central government. Henry VIII's reign was marked by economic disruption due to the dissolution of the monasteries. This policy not only redistributed wealth, but also created new landowning elites. The removal of monastic institutions, which had provided social welfare, also forced the state to consider alternative methods of poor relief. Elizabeth I implemented policies that further stimulated trade, including encouraging new industries and expanding overseas exploration. By the late 16th century, England faced a growing crisis of poverty. The population had been steadily rising. Agricultural practices were shifting due to enclosure, and inflation, driven by the influx of silver from the New World, was eroding wages. Meanwhile, the dissolution of the monasteries under Henry VIII had stripped away a key source of charity that had traditionally supported the destitute. With the increasing number of vagrants and beggars moving from town to town, social unrest loomed. In response, Elizabeth I's government codified a national system of poor relief. The Elizabethan Poor Laws of 1597 and 1601. These laws laid the foundation for England's approach to poverty management for the next 2 centuries. The Elizabethan Poor Laws created a structured, local approach to poor relief. Responsibility for the poor was placed in the hands of each parish, ensuring aid was administered at the community level. The system divided the poor into 2 categories. First, the deserving poor. These were people who were unable to work due to age, illness, or disability. They were to be given relief in the form of food, clothing, or sometimes work within parish-run almshouses or workhouses. Second, the undeserving poor. These were able-bodied individuals who were seen as capable of work, but either refused employment or wandered without means. To discourage vagrancy, strict punishments, including whipping, forced labor, or imprisonment, were imposed on those who did not comply with the system. Each parish appointed overseers of the poor, local officials tasked with collecting a special poor rate tax from property owners and distributing relief accordingly. Parishes also established workhouses and houses of correction, where the able-bodied poor could be put to work in exchange for sustenance. Children of impoverished families were often apprenticed to tradesmen to prevent them from falling into lifelong poverty. The Elizabethan government saw poverty as both a social problem and a threat to stability. The economic upheaval of the late Tudor period had led to high unemployment, and roaming bands of vagrants were perceived as a danger to law and order. The state feared rebellion from the discontented poor, particularly in an era of religious and political tensions. Additionally, the transition from feudalism to a market economy meant that the old system of land-based obligations between lords and peasants was breaking down. More people were dependent on wage labor, and when work was scarce, they had no means of survival. The poor laws sought to create a structured safety net that would prevent starvation while also discouraging idleness. The poor laws of 1597 and 1601 remained in effect with modifications until the early 19th century. They provided a model of local responsibility for poverty relief that influenced later welfare policies. Some key consequences of the laws included a nationwide welfare system. For the first time, England had a national, legally enforced system for aiding the poor. The expectation that each community should care for its own poor would shape English society for centuries. The development of the workhouse system. While workhouses were initially rare, the poor laws introduced the concept that the able-bodied poor should work in return for assistance. This idea became more prominent in the later 18th and 19th centuries. Harsh treatment of the poor. Though relief was provided, the system was often designed to discourage reliance on aid. The stigma attached to receiving parish relief remained strong, reinforcing the idea that only the truly desperate should seek help. A model for future welfare reforms. The principles of local taxation for poverty relief, categorization of the poor, and government intervention in social welfare would shape later policies, including the 19th century poor law reforms and even aspects of the modern welfare state. While the Elizabethan poor laws did not eliminate poverty, they represented an early attempt to balance compassion with control, setting a precedent for how societies would address poverty in the centuries to come. Chapter 5. Town and rural life. Market towns expanded significantly, driven by increasing commerce and local industries. These towns became centers of trade, with bustling marketplaces where artisans and merchants sold their goods. Wool production, which remained England's primary export, fueled economic growth and spurred the development of manufacturing hubs. Population movements accelerated as rural workers, displaced by enclosures, sought opportunities in towns and cities. While some found work in trades and domestic service, others struggled with the harsh realities of urban poverty. Tenant farming replaced traditional feudal labor obligations, granting farmers greater independence but also exposing them to market fluctuations. Chapter 6. Education and schools. Education in Tudor England varied widely by class and gender. Petty schools provided basic literacy for young children, primarily boys, while grammar schools offered a more rigorous classical education, often preparing students for university. Universities such as Oxford and Cambridge expanded their curricula, integrating humanist principles into their teachings. Religious institutions played a crucial role in education, with church schools emphasizing moral instruction. Apprenticeships also served as a form of education, training young men in trades and crafts. Women had limited access to formal education, but noblewomen often received private tutoring in literacy, music, and domestic management. Chapter 7. Women's roles in economy and society. Women's economic roles were diverse, though often constrained by legal and societal norms. Many women participated in family businesses, working alongside their husbands in markets, weaving, and brewing. In rural areas, women played essential roles in agricultural labor, particularly during harvest seasons. Noble women wielded influence in estate management, overseeing household affairs, and sometimes acting as patrons of the arts. However, laws restricted women's property rights, and their ability to engage in trade was often limited by guild regulations. Despite these challenges, some women, particularly widows, ran successful businesses, and played an active role in economic life. Chapter 8. The Reformation and its Economic Impact. The Reformation had profound economic consequences for England. The dissolution of monasteries not only altered land ownership, but also disrupted financial networks, as many monastic institutions had acted as lenders and landlords. This redistribution of land created a new class of gentry who gained wealth through land purchases. Religious persecution and changes in church structures influenced trade, as Protestant and Catholic merchants navigated shifting allegiances. The suppression of Catholic institutions led to the redirection of church wealth into the crown's coffers, funding military campaigns and overseas expansion. The economic upheavals of the Tudor period laid the foundations for England's transition into a commercial and colonial power. The Renaissance, Reformation, and evolving economic structures collectively reshaped society, setting the stage for further transformation in the coming centuries. Thank you for watching Part 4 of our series on the social and economic history of Britain, exploring the transformative years of the Renaissance and Tudor period. From the rise of the gentry to the dissolution of the monasteries, from enclosure to overseas trade, we have traced the profound changes that shaped England's economy and society. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, and share to help others discover this journey through history. Join us for Part 5, where we move into the early Stuart period and the Glorious Revolution, 1603 to 1688. We'll examine the turmoil of civil war, the challenges of monarchy, the growth of commerce, and the beginnings of Britain's imperial ambitions. Until then, thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in the next chapter of Britain's history.